At its heart, Ghost Recon Breakpoint is a game about hiking safely, proper tent erection, and solving problems amicably. Breakpoint is what I like to call a tactical sandbox, and that's where it really starts to shine, in my opinion, playing at a high difficulty with friends or strangers in co-op in the middle of this huge map that's just rife for opportunities to do some real spec ops shit. And they've made a lot of advancements to the enemy's AI to facilitate this as a spec ops fantasy, if you will. But it is a really cool tactical sandbox, and a lot of the features that make it a really cool tactical sandbox surprised me. And in my opinion, these are some of the best parts of Ghost Recon Breakpoint, many of these being core parts of the game, and they got a lot of these right. I'll have a separate video going over the other aspects like weapon tiers and loot. That should be its own video. Before we start, I'd like to give a big thanks to Ubisoft for sponsoring this video. You can pre-order Ghost Recon Breakpoint to start playing 3 days early. I've got a link down in the description for that. And there's also an open beta starting on September 26th for all platforms. And I always recommend playing open betas because it's the best way to figure out if you enjoy the core gameplay or not. Anyway, I had played Ghost Recon Breakpoint twice before this beta, once at the top secret reveal and again at E3. But this was the first time that I got to play with the entire gameplay loop, like the weaponsmith, the hub, weapon tiers and loot. There's a lot more going on with this game than you might think. It can be a little overwhelming at first. In many ways, it's different from previous Ghost Recon games. This isn't Wildlands 2, although some features have been carried over and improved. I would say the biggest changes are the injury system, terrain and stamina, the bivouac, buddy carry, prone blending, John Bernthal, advanced enemy AI, adaptive cover, seamless open world co-op, Johnny B, unified progression, the loot system, weapon tiers, PvP at launch, and post-launch raids. But overall, it feels more visceral. From the enemies feeling more alive to terrain impacting gameplay, actually the enemies feel fantastic this time around. Their animations are more realistic and sometimes they respond when you kill their friends.
If the ghost knew what was good for him, they'd...
I see a bad guy! Hit the hostile! Sammy! Oh, Sammy's down!
It's just delightful. But what is the AI capable of? What are the innovative things they're doing with the open world? And what about those drones? Let's find out. One of my favorite elements of Breakpoint is the mission structure. If you want to play the game straightforward, you can, with mission markers showing you exactly where the objective is and waypoints telling you how to get there. But they've structured missions where if you turn off guided mode, you'll no longer have that guidance. Instead, you'll need to use intel, critical thinking, and geography to guide you throughout Aroa, maybe with a stop off at a local town to get additional info. What's really neat is that you're not just turning off part of the UI, it's the way missions are designed. So when you're finding documents, reports, ID badges, or even cigarette packs, those could all be information critical to your mission and discovering what the next step is. Sometimes they even give you missions. Interrogating hostiles and exploring the world is another way to find missions. Not all missions are handed to you, and I think that's fun. When you've got an open world, you should play to its strengths. The map and missions shouldn't need any hand-holding if you don't want it. This is something that I hope becomes standard across gaming. Naturally, a sandbox is only as good as the world it's comprised of. In Breakpoint, the map is pretty important because it directly affects your character. And it's not just slopes or ascending mountains your character reacts to. Traversing terrain like grass, snow, and sand each feel different, and weather also affects terrain grip. It definitely feels like they're tapping challenging gameplay through constant adaptivity, which is very Spec Ops. The world itself looks consistently excellent. Forests are appropriately dense, and the lighting and shadows are so great. Atmospheric density is juicy, well realized, and adds to the depth of the whole image. When you're in it, when you're playing in the game, you really start to appreciate the graphics and the sound design. It works so well in gameplay. When shit hits the fan, you can feel it. Explosions are fantastic, they're bombastic. It's exhilarating, running from grenades going off. Nights are pretty damn dark. I've lightened it a bit here so you can more easily see, but thermal and night vision are now a necessity. I would actually say that most tools in general are now more useful than they used to be. The world is filled with details like gnat-sized bugs flying through the air, wind effects, and you can hear if you have a flat tire, which is a great touch. Clean water like streams can be used to refill your canteen, which in turn helps stamina. Nice detail. Something I absolutely love is the realistic way that you run through water. You don't just cut through it, you've got some bulk. You gotta push through that water, just like in real life when you try to run in a swimming pool. I also appreciate the realistic way your ghost alters footing on different terrain. Personally, I love the more grounded movement system. Your ghost has more weight, more inertia, even the new firing stance is authentic. Now, it can take some getting used to. There aren't many games with this kind of gravity, so I can understand if some people preferred the more gamey movement that we had in the past. But aside from me personally loving this new movement system, I do feel like it better fits the Ghost Recon they're trying to make in Breakpoint. Break open his armor. Oh shit! God damn! You can't hide from these things. Oh fuck, no. Shit. Depending on where you're hurt, if you have a leg injury from falling, that'll affect your stamina, speed, and stealth capabilities. A bullet wound in the arm affects your aim and how quickly you can reload your gun, and the reload animation for the gun is actually slower when your arm is injured. Speaking of which, reloading animations are way more accurate and detailed for each type of gun. They are pretty good. The injury system is something I'm a huge fan of in this game. In fact, I think they could go even further with it if they wanted to. I would like that, actually, if they made it even more punishing. Maybe on a higher difficulty, an option for no health regeneration at all. I don't know, maybe that's just me. Let me know what you guys think in the comments about a more punishing version of the injury system in the game. Even though they've improved vehicle handling from wildlands, trekking through mountains or cutting through forests was so immersive that I found myself passing up cars in favor of exploring. I highly recommend playing this game without any hand-holding. Turn off the UI, turn off the minimaps, turn off the tagging, and let visuals, sounds, and the gear on your ghost guide you. It's a whole nother experience. The bivouac taps into the Spec Ops sandbox aspect, letting you get certain temporary buffs through mission prep, which is immersive, it's kind of neat. And you can break camp at a specific hour, which is very handy for timing stealth runs. And speaking of the sandbox experience, they've taken a step forward with outposts and enemy AI. Or a couple of steps forward. In my opinion, this is maybe the greatest improvement in Breakpoint, and certainly one of its strongest features, which most people seem to agree on. I enjoy a good tactical sandbox, and that's what I'm looking for in these new Ghost Recon games. So what we're about to talk about is very key. While I can't speak for the entire map, the outposts and bases that I encountered in the beta felt unique in terms of layouts and the threats you would find in them, which made for fun infiltrations. And there's just more visual interest in general. There's realistic clutter. Sometimes the base is positioned next to antiquated structures. They generally felt believable in a way that made sense with their purpose and their location. And then you'll see bases that obviously the location is of more importance, and therefore they have more resources. Drones, better equipped hostiles, and less obvious points of entry. But they might have a higher chance of interesting intel, loot, or even a blueprint. The skill tree is definitely robust, no matter what playstyle you take. There's a lot in there that's going to help you infiltrate, including the amazing fence breaching tool. But what really makes all this shine are the improvements to enemy AI. There's different ways to handle being caught, and the AI is not omnipotent. They don't automatically know where you are. For example, if you use C4, they'll head to the source of the explosion and then carefully fan out from there, which is awesome. You can now pick up and carry enemy bodies while you're stealthing. You can also carry your injured friends in co-op so you can take them to a safer place before you heal them. Sometimes you can shut down a compound's power generator, which will shut down lights, turrets, and mortar emplacements. Not only are the bases themselves more natural, but the soldiers within them are more natural as well. How they move around, the compounds, the patrols, they're more dynamic and unpredictable, they're more complex. And they also weren't able to instantly detect my position upon discovering my drone. Now, if I knocked into something with my drone, they would take notice and go on alert and search the area. But I never had a moment where the enemy's detection felt cheap. Prone camo is an excellent way to hide from patrols because running is an option, it's always an option, but they're better about being able to see you in a way that I feel is pretty realistic. So you can't cheese it as easily as you used to, and neither can they. Additionally, in co-op, if your friend is spotted, you remain undetected unless you give your position away, which means you can now use purposeful distractions in your plans. But if you do get spotted, you can break line of sight and all they have is your last known position. In addition to AI improvements, enemy animations are way more natural. They'll take cover more dynamically, their animations have more weight, and when searching for your location, they move more carefully, almost like how a cat stalks. There's so many cool touches, so many nice details you don't really notice watching trailers or watching gameplay, but once you're playing the game for a couple of hours, it's a very solid, consistent experience. Best of all, soldiers actually acknowledge things that are happening or things that you've done in the world.
Sammy's down!
Would it be psychotic to say it made killing them more fun? It feels more satisfying because it feels like you're killing fleshed out people instead of NPC. Okay, that sounds worse. When I would play at higher difficulties and I got spotted by the drone that sends wolves to your location, I had to ask myself, can I drop these guys before they can drop me? Sure, they die from a shot to the head, but can I headshot all of them in the seconds it would take for them to headshot me? The fact that I had to think about that while I'm laying prone covered in mud as they approach my position is fantastic. Fight or flight kicks in and you feel this pressure of time. I appreciate that wolves don't feel unnaturally strong. They're not superhumans, they're operators. They'll still die from a single headshot from a 9mm, but they're way better at killing you than normal soldiers. Especially at higher levels and higher difficulties, they kill me pretty damn quick, just as I can kill them pretty damn quick. Fuck! They found me! I personally found it way more punishing to go Rambo than to go Ghost. But that's where I think this game really shines, playing at high difficulty in co-op, relying on the map and sound design instead of the UI. I would like more people to try Breakpoint at a high difficulty with guided mode off, most of the UI off, actually, and just use sound to orient yourself. It's really fun. Many people think you're going to be fighting armies of drones, or that they're the main threat, but I found their implementation to be more reserved than fantastical. Mostly. Oh, God. Well, that's the rocket launcher. It's all used up. We get him? Yes! They're not what you would expect going in. They're not an army. They're not everywhere, they don't replace humans, and not all of them are weaponized. They're a supplemental force with very specific roles, which is another layer that you have to iron out in your strategies. Not all bases have them, but the ones that do, it's another layer. And they're not bullet sponges either. Simply shooting them until they die is akin to shooting a bullet-resistant vest instead of the head. The best method isn't to go in guns blazing. I found a couple of AIM drones that were patrolling near an objective that I needed to hit, and since they were a few levels above mine, and therefore very dangerous, I decided to take them down the quickest way I could think of. If you encounter and observe enough drones, you'll find they each have deficiencies and vulnerabilities that can be exploited. AIM drones use thermal imaging to detect heat and movement. I've had them soft spot me before when I got too close, but I was able to evade their search by prone camoing myself in snow. Here, I decided to use cloaking spray so I could get in close enough to plant my C4. I said it was quick, not quiet. The explosion obviously alerted the other drone, but the cloaking spray still allowed me to approach relatively safely. Once I engage, you can see him aim in my direction. He knows something's there, but he can't lock it. There are less explosive ways to do this. You could use an armor burster round from afar. Some drones can even be disabled without using weapons. Knowing where to shoot them or how to approach them is a key part of their gameplay. Shooting the main camera on the aim will disorient their targeting abilities. All of this loops into coordination. It's a hell of a lot of fun taking on drones in co-op scenarios. But co-op against drones isn't like co-op against humans. It may be easier to execute strategies, but drones with more than one gun like the AIM can target multiple players simultaneously, so it's not exactly easier in that sense. I encourage making use of all the tools at your disposal beyond firearms. Don't just focus on the guns. There's over 20 varieties of drones, and each drone's chassis is a basic platform that can be adapted for different situations and tasks that dramatically change its purpose. There's these security drones that mark and pursue you, but some are fitted with guns, which are a real pain in the ass in a good way. They're definitely a challenge to fight. Around compounds and settlements, you might encounter non-hostile drones like benign water carriers, drones carrying medical supplies, which you can actually shoot down and pilfer, and some drones water fields. Not all the drones are used as weapons platforms, but those that are, once you engage, their movements become very abrupt and unpredictable. If you get detected and attack the drones, it can be punishing, so it's best to take them out smartly and avoid battle. If you flee, they will aggressively pursue you, even at high speeds, in ways that humans can't. So they do add something to gameplay more than just, oh, this is a powerful gun. If I'm going to be fighting drones, I want them to add something unique to the experience, and I feel that these do. They're quite different from humans, and they add layers that I find entertaining. I like this game quite a bit. They're doing a lot here that you can't find anywhere else. Now there's some features and some things that I didn't get into in this video. I didn't get into weapon tiers or the loot system. I'm going to get into that in my next video, but generally, this is a great Spec Ops fantasy. There's a lot of fun and a lot of options to be had here if you want to play as a ghost, or if you want to play this as more of a straight action game. Although that is a little more unforgiving because you're not a super soldier. You will die fairly easily if you're not careful. Regardless, thanks again to Ubisoft for sponsoring this video. If you guys want to check out Ghost Recon Breakpoint, check out the link in the description. The game releases October 4th. Thanks again, and until next time, game massively.